Welcome to We're People First, the Jeff Moyer Show.
Hello, everybody. We're so happy you're here with us today. We're just so excited about this show. This is going to be a really special show. It's dedicated to fathers, and we have a wonderful father that's going to be talking later. Jeff's got songs that he wrote about his father, and so I know you're going to really enjoy it. It's a little bit of different format. But before we go, let me just tell you what you're seeing. We're again in Jeff's studio in San Diego, California. And then the other square that you see is us, our guest's background. And he'll be talking to you about the art pieces that you see there. He is an artist, beside being a father and grandfather. And then we're going to definitely keep to 15 minutes for each section. So I'm going to turn this over to Jeff because we did get some feedback on the last show and we encourage that. Go to jeffmoyer.com and contact Jeff and let us know. We have lots of viewers. We'd like to hear from you. So this is what one viewer said.
And we've had 5,000 views for the last two shows. So 5,000 people are spending time, and that's the greatest gift we can give each other is attention and time. Jeanette told us that we missed a couple things and we crammed so much into our section on mental health and mental illness. She said that she wanted to make sure everyone knew that mental illness is an illness like diabetes and it can be treated with medication and with therapy. And when people need to be going into an intense situation, behavioral health modules that are attached to hospitals or psychiatric hospitals where people can get intense evaluation and therapy, group therapy, individual therapy, and medication evaluations. So, Jeanette, thanks for that feedback. Today we're going to be talking about fathers, and we're going to begin with a song with slides and signing that I wrote for my dad toward the end of his life. I played it for him before he passed, and I played it at his funeral. My father had mouth cancer. I'll tell you his story in a bit, but he slowly lost his lower jaw. And this is the song that tells the story of my admiration for the way my father handled adversity. He taught me to sing. As a strong young man, I can see him standing with the courage to fight for what he knew was fair, full of hope and dreams, future aspiration. Time was on his side and his future fair. And he taught me to sing, and he taught me compassion in the spring of his youth, how his laughter would ring. And he always said, if a job was worth doing, give it your all and give it your best. And he lived by that law, and her God, he was put to the test. For as the path of fortune turns, the lesson hard it burns, some things lie beyond reason or control. And with each passing year it seemed another fading dream would have to be replaced by yet another. But he always said you must roll with the punches, pick yourself up and start again. He said life has to be walked one step at a time. And he deeply believed that though beyond our vision the plan was unfolding as it should, he believed that God only gives what he knows we can bear. And he taught me to sing, and he taught me compassion down the spring of all lives, tears and laughter do ring. But he always said you must roll with the punches, pick yourself up and start again. He said life has to be walked one step at a time. And he deeply believed that though beyond our vision, the plan was unfolding as it should. He believed that God only gives what he knows we can bear. And he taught me to sing, and he taught me compassion. Down the years of all lives, tears and laughter do ring. But I'll always hear his laughter ringing out. I'll always hear his song singing out. I'll follow his words. I'll live by the standard he set. And I'll follow his words, and I'll live by the standard he set. My father,
and
Jeff Moyer,
fatherlessness.
lived a life of managing tremendous adversity. In addition to the cancer that took his lower jaw, when I was 5 years old and my brother was born that summer, I began to go blind, and my brother was born with a severe cognitive disability at the time called severe mental retardation. So as I began to obviously lose my vision, my parents were told I was pretending I couldn't see, so my dad really wanted to believe that. And it was 3 years before an ophthalmologist said, no, he's really going blind. We don't know why, but we're going to believe him. So my dad had the primary props that support a man's life: his sons and his family, and his career. He trained to be a chiropractor but couldn't afford to go into practice. He wound up driving a 7-state route to sell machines to factories, and he was in chronic pain from a back injury, so he really suffered. And my father was a true stoic, meaning he didn't complain. He handled the blows of life with dignity and with courage. Father's Day is a day that many of us celebrate our fathers, and many of us dislike because of difficult relationships with our fathers. For example, we know that 45% of marriages end in divorce, the first marriage. 60% of second marriages end in divorce. That leaves a lot of children growing up with the father out of the home. And we know that almost 56% of fathers don't pay adequate child support, 30% pay none at all. So that can leave very painful memories with us about our fathers. And many fathers, like mine, become alcoholics or drug abusers or wind up going to jail, or many other causes that separate us from love of our fathers. The first rule is forgiveness. If we can forgive our fathers, then we open our hearts to our own integrity and to compassion. If we have that knot of hatred and dislike in our hearts for our father, that really radiates in our actions as well, because each of us have a male and female inner nature, as Carl Jung taught us, the anima and the animus. So all of us have an inner father, all of us have an inner mother, and may we all find forgiveness for our own father's humanity, so that we rise to the place of acceptance of who our fathers were or who our fathers are, and open our hearts to love for them as is, and finally compassion for the rest of the world. Because the male attributes of strength and leadership, you know what, in this culture, unfortunately in this culture, men, we see a strong man as a man who has money, who drives a nice car, possibly who shoots guns, and who loves sports. And I would suggest that men are duped into belief that that is the strong man. I say the strong man is sensitivity, empathy, compassion, openness to life's suffering, and acceptance and courage. As my father lived, having a life that is open to all of life's moments. Life is either, we can see it as pleasure separated by pain, or pain with moments of pleasure. But either way, life will give us pleasure and pain throughout our days. And if we can live with an openness to all of that and an acceptance of life, if we can forgive life for what happens, if we can forgive our fathers, and if we can forgive ourselves, then that inner male, that leadership, that strength, that courage can evolve within us to a higher level of understanding.
I think you're talking about the divine masculine. Correct?
You know what, that's right. It is. We all talk about the divine feminine. Well, we don't all, but many of us talk about
it's
the
all
divine
over
feminine.
the place, right?
But the divine masculine is also true.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Now, your relationship with your father was also difficult, wasn't it?
Very difficult. I'm not going to go into big detail, but yes, he was physically abusive to me, not to my sister, and I was so afraid of him. I so wanted him to love me, and so I did adore him, but in a fearful way. But we'll talk about that some other time.
Okay, we will do that. So, yeah?
Go ahead.
Oh.
I'm done.
So, yeah, my dad too was, he had many phases of his life, as you saw in the photographs. As a kid, he was like a god. He could do Olympic grade gymnastics, even at age 37. He and his brother could do gymnastics, team work together. They were amazing.
Yeah, the slideshow, I think, showed his physique.
And as a little boy, I expected that I should be able to do those things as well. Then he fell into alcoholism after my brother was institutionalized. And I grew up with a very angry father. Just before they discovered cancer, he quit drinking.
How old were you then, Jeff?
He died when I was 31. He was sick for 8 years, so 23.
So most of your growing up years, between 5 years old and that age, you were pretty much with an angry father.
Yeah, he had moments of going to task for building models and so forth with me that I couldn't see to build. He would actually just build them. But disappointment after disappointment for him because I couldn't see what he had to teach. However, after his cancer, and as you saw in the slideshow, he became a spiritual giant because he was so disfigured, his long friends didn't recognize him. And he lost the ability to speak, and he lost the ability to swallow. So he fed himself through a feeding tube for 4 years. And that was when the true Stoic arose. And he handled 63 operations without complaint, and always with hope.
Do you feel like at the end of his life, both of you together had come to some kind of a new level of, say, love for each other, appreciation?
Absolutely. Once he quit drinking and he was available for those 8 years, we really had a wonderful relationship. We're going to be talking next to a man who is one of my role models, a great man named Fletch. And he's going to come on and we talk about his life and its many phases. But father and fatherlessness, may we all forgive, accept, and love.
And I see Fletch is in the screen there. How are you doing, Fletch?
Doing that very well, thank you.
Guest interview.
Music. Okay.
Okay, Fletch Russell, nice to see you.
Good to see you too, Jeff. I move into a position here, and after everything we went through to get this new format, it looks very good, and you sound very good.
Good. And Fletch, you have quite a story. Why don't you begin by telling us about your relationship with your father?
Okay, this goes back. First I was born in Waldo, Missouri, in a fourth of 6 children. So my father was pretty busy those first few years, and he taught art at the Kansas City Art Institute in Kansas City. And my mother, she stayed home as the homemaker, and it was very good. I had a great childhood, and so when moving from the city of Kansas City, we moved out to a beautiful lake, and it wasn't it's a suburb of Kansas City, but it was great growing up. I had the run of the place. You could explore, you could swim, and I spent a lot of time in my father's studio as he would talk, and I would ask questions and watch him paint. I liked working with wood and stone and solving spatial problems. And so when I attended Baker University, my father had taken a position at Baker University, and so I had more years.
You're breaking up, Fletch. You're breaking up.
Yeah, I think you're frozen. There you go. So were you in your father's classes at all, Fletch?
Yes, I had, and it was tough because in art, I wasn't just criticized by him, but the whole faculty would criticize my artwork.
Oh, of course. It's tough being the child of the teacher.
Now, Fletch, I know that the painting behind you is a painting that your father created, but we'll talk about that when we talk about your children. But tell us about your relationship with your mother. That's so poignant.
My mother, you talk about, I don't think there's ever any perfect, if you get through your whole life without having any type of diversity as far as, I remember going all the way through not having anybody in my family die. I mean, I'd never gone to a funeral.
Wow.
During college, my mother did come down and was diagnosed with cancer. And so my junior year, I took off and went home to caregive since nobody else was available. So my father could continue working. And I also had two younger sisters. So.
And you wrote a little bit about that, didn't you, in one of your collaborated books with your lovely wife?
Yes, I did. This is one of the books that as we get in through the rest of the history, as we start looking at where we are, Carol wrote a book called Sandwiched, and I'll read a few sentences here. It's an honorable sacrifice to give back to the human condition by taking care of your aging or sick parents. When I was 22 and my mother was dying of cancer, I took a semester off of college and moved home to help her out. That decision to move home at that time of my life is one I would never regret. The giving of my time and the time spent with my mother, knowing she wasn't going to survive, she was in her mid-50s, gave me a better understanding of life and what's important.
Oh, that's so powerful.
That's wonderful for you to share that. And then tell us about your meeting and marrying your wonderful wife, Carol.
Okay, back to, since I did go back to Baker and finish out, and Carol graduated, I met her at Baker University, and we both graduated in the same year. And it was never knowing where you're going to go. We did move on to where we both went on to graduate school. I went to get my Master of Fine Arts, and she graduated in early childhood. And so we both agreed at that point, and we were looking for jobs, and she took a job at South Dakota State University. She took a job at STS, South Dakota State University. So we left Arkansas and went up to South Dakota State University.
So, excuse me, Jeff. I really like what you had said, and I'm so blessed to have you guys as friends, because you've been friends with Jeff for a long time. And I've said before, I've inherited this wonderful group of friends from Jeff. And so I don't know a whole lot about you like Jeff does, but one thing I think I heard you say is you decided that when you had children, one of you was going to stay home with the children. You didn't want them to have to be raised by caregivers in any way, correct?
Correct. And that's, when you sit down after you're married and all of a sudden you're up and so Carol got the job, and I was home. We had bought a 100-year-old house in South Dakota on the prairie. And, so I started to remodel it, and that's where we started our family. And so knowing that one of us had to be home, I could do other things. I didn't get a lot of artwork done that first 10 years, but Cassie, McCall, and Tally were all raised in that old house. And then
and you were the person that stayed home, is that correct?
That's correct. I was the stay-at-home dad. There weren't too many stay-at-home dads that I knew, so this was taking on a role that was very misunderstood by both family members and friends.
Mm-hmm. And you said your children were born there. Tell us about your third child, Tally, and her birth and the impact it had on your life.
Yeah, this was, Tally was born with spina bifida, which is a congenital birth defect of the spinal cord. This has now changed the normalcy of my being a home dad, where I had everything in control of cooking and cleaning and taking care of everything. But when Tally was born, she spent the first month of her life in the NICU, which is the intensive care unit for children. She had 3 surgeries the first week of her life, 9 surgeries before she was 1 year old.
Oh.
So when Cassie, at this point, was starting kindergarten and Mikhail was in preschool, Tally would have early interventions with people that would come over to the house and therapies and home health visits. And doctor's visits and clinics would be an hour's drive to Sioux Falls, and the weather sometimes was terrible. We had a difficult time sometimes just making it. As Tally entered public school, I learned that special education, what special education was, and in developing an individual education plan for her, and Individuals with Disabilities and Education Act, and the Americans with Disabilities Act.
So go ahead.
You really had feet on the ground with what it meant to be an active father with a child with, I don't like the word special needs, but a child with the needs relating to her disability. But just like you were there for your mother, you were there for Tally and your other daughters. And now your grandchildren.
And now our grandchildren, yeah.
Yes, that's great. Well, all right. I want to, because like I said, I don't know all this like Jeff knows about you. So how did you end up in Kansas?
Well, as we were, Carol went back to graduate school to get her doctorate. And because she only had a master's teaching, I don't think you can do that today. Went back in early childhood and special ed doctorate. And after 15 years, she accepted a teaching position at Emporia State University's Teachers College. And so we bought land in the country. There was nothing really accessible. By that time, Tally was in her wheelchair. And we designed and built an accessible, modest house with ramps and wraparound decks and roll-in showers and grab bars. And I finally got to build my studio in the pole barn garage.
Awesome. I've heard Jeff say that his brother was his greatest teacher, and it sure does sound like Tally might have been a great teacher in your life also. Okay, let's go on and go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I just wanted to ask you then about, is your compassion continued? What about Carol's parents?
Well, as the girls grew, as they do, all 3 were graduating. Cassie graduated high school, and Mikhail, as we started I started, kind of waning as far as being that home. I got more time to work, and I was teaching classes. And then I had this idea as I stood in the front door of our house out in the country, and we have 12 acres around us. And I had the idea to build a space across the deck from our front door and have Carol's aging parents move down from Minnesota. This would solve the problem of them not having them live out their lives in a nursing home. Carol's mother's wish. And so we worked hard to move them down here. And
Fletch, when I hear you talk about this, I just see this huge throbbing heart. You just have such a compassion for the people that are in your circle. We're gonna scoot along here because we're kind of losing time. I think you've got about 4 more minutes.
And Carol has something to say.
Carol has something to say, but we do want to say about you being grandparenting, just real quickly. How many grandparents or grandchildren do you have?
Okay, I'll go real fast and say that Cassie went on and is now a associate professor of educational psychology at the University of Northern Colorado, and which we also see a lot of siblings that go into medical fields if they have children that siblings that are have medical needs. Michelle is married, a mom of 2 incredible little girls, Ailey and Isla, and that's 3.5 and 14 months. It's pure joy. Carol gets on Facebook.
Oh, you're frozen again there.
And here comes Carol.
And let's get Carol in the picture.
This is my partner in parenting, and I couldn't have been the house husband, as you put it, Jeff. I don't call it, but my wife. I was the stay-at-home dad, but
yeah.
Did I say that?
Hey, Carol, how are you?
Good. I'm good. We're a team. We're better together. So.
Well, you're a power couple in my eyes. That's for sure.
So, Carol, you have something to share with us.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, I wanted to share a couple of things. This Fletcher was talking about staying an at-home dad. Misunderstood. My dad, I love my dad. I honor my dad, but he did not get it at all.
Well, you've got 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Okay. All right. Anyway, so I remember it was Fletcher's idea to bring them down here. My mom would look out the window and would say, "What would we do without Fletcher?" And I always agreed. She thought he was Pa from Little House on the Prairie out working. Fletcher fixes everything. He makes me breakfast every day. He assists Tally. We work collaboratively together. We have very different styles, but we can still be friends. And I have a couple of things just to share as a Father's Day gift to Fletcher. I asked our daughters to say something about their dad. And I'll try to make this as quick as I can. Cassie, our oldest, said, I guess I'll Mikkel first because I am on the wrong page. Mikkel said, my dad Fletcher truly is a non-traditional, one-of-a-kind father, such caring and loving granddad to his 2 granddaughters. What I've learned from him the power of creative problem solving, appreciation of nature, and the grounded generosity it takes to offer and help assist others without any questions asked. Cassie, our oldest, describes Dad as our biggest supporter, always helps put things into perspective, loves nature and creating, and I love watching him interact with his granddaughters. What she's learned from him, Dad taught me confidence, resilience, and pragmatism, in addition to so much about music, art, critical thinking, life, and unconditional love. And lastly, Tally, author and artist, she says you can't ask an author to write one sentence, describing Dad. Dad into words. He doesn't give up easily. He shares his artistic talents. He does things that most other dads don't do. He doesn't question. He does it. He does with nothing for praise. He just does it. He doesn't follow the norm. Instead of in the box thinking, he makes his own boxes. I think my life made him more of a problem solver. And what I've learned, just because one way doesn't work out, doesn't mean there's no solution to the problem. He always finds a way.
Okay, how about that, Fletch? Now, we have 1 minute, and we really want to see the beautiful artwork. So Carol's going to assist you while you're going to talk.
Give us a quick review.
Don't turn away from the mic.
I'm not going to. I'm going to face it, but I have to see what I'm talking about.
I got you.
This is kind of like teaching art. Art classes. You have to
Yeah.
face the students. But this is my daughter. This or my father's portrait of after Tally was born. I would walk around, and he did a drawing. It's on wood, on board, and so that's Tally peering out over my shoulder.
Ah.
That's
And what's Carol have there?
This piece was done after Tally was born. It's called Cradle of Tears. My expression is I basically do my work. It's about the human condition, and so Tally's. And this brought, that was quite. I'll fill you in later with the story.
Sure.
After she was born, it's not a nice story. But this piece here was after my mother passed away, and I'm working out of my little studios that were about as big as my shoebox, and so the pieces are small, but they are assemblage pieces. This was called Honorable Sacrifice, and actually, I sold this piece to a woman that loved it so much. After she died, she had me clean out her house in her will, and so I got it back.
Oh, you got it back. How neat.
And tell us the name of that again, Fletch. It was hard to understand.
Honorable Sacrifice.
Honorable Sacrifice.
Okay.
And blue in the face. You got to talk about that one.
Blue in the face. This would be when we start dealing with all of Tally's. This is a kind of my self-portrait. I actually have my own hair. I have another one started. This is the COVID.
COVID ponytail, yeah.
Hair out over listening to people deal with setting up a plan for Tally in school. I got blue in the face. He got mad. Everybody got mad.
Yeah.
And we used to really, it's a hard thing. And I think people that go through that process really don't, having Carol as a special ed professor helped a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Now, we have one more?
Okay, one more. And I'm now doing, this is during the cold months when I don't work outside. I also majored in photography. These are climate change, and we talked about our climate change. Everybody's got to take awareness. This one is an abstraction, but it's also climate change paradise. After seeing those fires in Paradise, California,
yes,
this is what it reminded me of. So,
well, you know what, Fletch, you are so talented in quite a few different ways. I mean, you've got sculpture, photography,
and matters of the heart.
Yes, definitely.
The artistry of living.
At the end of the program, people are going to be able to contact you through Jeff. So hopefully you can communicate with some folks that are interested in more about your art.
And we are going to list, when we get the show notes up, which is a goal that we are going to meet, we'll have a list of all of the books that Fletch co-wrote and did the photography for. And Fletch and Carol, thank you very much for being our guest today, and I'm sorry this is so rushed. We could have an hour on you alone.
Yes, we could. You'll have to come back another time.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Fletch.
Hey, thank you.
We love you.
Love you too.
Love you too.
Bye.
Okay, honey, we're going to move on to the third section of the show. So are you ready for that?
I'm ready for that.
Okay.
Being a father myself and being a watchful son and now being a grandfather, I've learned that what we do, all of us do as human beings, is set up goals for ourselves, the way it's going to be. Our hopes, our dreams, so tied up in our children. And what Fletch has demonstrated so beautifully is how he took his loss through Tally's being born with a physical disability that required so much medical intervention and then so much advocacy and everything from an accessible home to accessible transportation. What he demonstrates so beautifully is how one man has turned that toward the good. However, all men live with the losses that compile, as demonstrated earlier by my dad. But I want to read you a piece from my book called Dad's Hope, which talks about a moment that told me so much about my father's true nature. Dad's Hope. My parents had received bad news in August from Dr. Kasdan. He reported that I had lost more vision in the month since his initial exam. I had begun 3rd grade in September. Now, in late October, school had settled into focused routines. I liked my pretty young teacher. In fact, I had a hopeless crush on her. As had become the pattern, she happily wrote out for me everything on the board. At home, I could see that my parents were treating me a bit differently. Their denial had turned into shock and to a sort of muffled anguish, as the complexity of Mark's retardation and the deterioration vision created grief upon grief. But acceptance about my condition had taken root. And now my computer is jabbering here.
And you're reading from your book, Grit, correct?
I'm reading from my book, Grit, and I'm listening to the computer speak, and then I hear it and speak it. Okay, we've covered that. Okay. The reality of it couldn't, the reality of my visual deterioration couldn't be denied. The doctor counseled that although he did not understand the cause of my visual deterioration, the reality of it could not be denied. He recognized the rareness of my condition and ultimately wrote about my case for a professional journal. I had begun 3rd grade in September. Now, in late October, school had settled into a focused routine. Okay, I've read that too. I'm so sorry. At home, okay, I've read that. Their denial had turned from shock into a sort of deeply muffled anguish. Their denial, it repeats itself several times, as the complexities of my deteriorating vision created grief upon grief. But acceptance about my vision had taken root. My favorite time of day was evening, after Mom had washed the dinner dishes, with Bonnie and me taking turns drying them. Our homework would then be completed. Our pattern for that special time of day was, I suppose, a pretty normal part of regular, comfortable family life. Every other evening, my sister and I would take our baths, taking turns being first to use the bath water, a carryover from the deprivation of the Depression, and my grandparents' pre-indoor plumbing rural roots. After Mark went to sleep, we all would put on our pajamas, robes, and slippers, and relax while watching television together. One of my dad's previous jobs in the late 40s had been selling early televisions, and we had been the first family on the block to have a set. But in 1957, TVs were commonplace. It was the golden age of family-oriented feel-good television programs such as Mr. Peepers, Topper, and Circus Boy. Mark went to bed pretty early, and we would enjoy a tranquil, stress-free zone of TV programs, snacks, and downtime. It was during just such an evening's television reverie, Dad went into the vision to prepare bowls of ice cream with selected toppings for the 4 of us. A couple of years before, he had added a half bath off of our kitchen at the back of our small wood frame house. I chose it rather than walking upstairs to the house's original bathroom. It seemed like quite a luxury. My dad busied himself dishing out the ice cream into 4 colored aluminum bowls that we had gotten over a period of weeks with Phillips at the Sunoco gas station, where my young married student Uncle Norman worked. I was passing back to the kitchen when my dad said he had something to tell me. My dad never spoke to me in such a way. and I stopped with eager anticipation, wondering what matter of consequence was waiting to present itself. My dad wore a lightweight steel blue bathrobe with white piping around the collar and cuffs, moccasin slippers, and yellow pajamas. His back was turned to me as he dug into the carton, filling the bowls with the 3 flavors of Neapolitan ice cream. Bonnie liked chocolate and vanilla. It was strawberry and vanilla for me. As he worked, his impressive muscles of his shoulders flexed under his nightclothes. He stopped and stood erect, although he did not turn around. He said, "Jeff, Grandma Jane and I have been talking. You know, Grandma Jane, you and I have the same color of eyes. We all had very dark brown eyes, a vestige of a Native American ancestor, and the source of considerable family pride." Dad turned to face me and continued to speak. "We decided that we would both give you one of our eyes." He stopped talking. My mind raced with the giddy possibility of seeing normally, and the guilty thought that my sight would come at the price of my dad and grandmother losing an eye. A long moment passed, and I could see Dad's shoulders shake. His handsome face was twisted in torment and sorrow. He squeezed his eyes shut as he choked back a sob as he said, "But the doctor said it's impossible. An operation wouldn't work. He can't do it. I can't help you. I can't help you." With that simple finality, he wrapped me in his strong arms and held me as he sobbed a deep and bottomless cry. I began to cry too. Dad wept and shook. I had my arms round him as well, a useless attempt to comfort him. There was no comfort for either of us. We stood in that moment of impossible mutual desire to ease each other's grief. We embraced in love and helplessness. Standing in that modest kitchen, I sensed the moment's timelessness and poignancy. No other words were spoken. We both dried our tears, and my dad turned back to finish the ice cream preparation by adding chocolate, butterscotch, and cherry sauce, as requested. I went back into the living room and settled onto my place on the floor, very close and to the side of the TV set. A new concession to the reality of my ruined vision was that I was allowed to sit as close as I needed to see the screen. I sat at an angle so as not to block anyone else's view. My dad brought us our ice cream, and we relaxed into the last show before school night bedtime and the end of our evening together.
Wow. And that's from Grit. So if you want to hear more of that or read more of that, please see Jeff's book, Grit, A Family Memoir.
On adversity and triumph. And yes, my dad in that moment expressed what Fletch expressed, the great, what did he say, his cradle of sorrow, I think, was a piece.
Mm-hmm.
And it was my father's expression of his bottomless grief. And that's what we all must come to in the course of living our lives, our disappointments. For example, my own son, when he was 4 years old, developed a blood condition that was frightening as can be, and he had to go every 2 weeks to Stanford Hospital for blood tests. And he hated it, we hated it, and to watch my son suffer with something I could not help. I know what my dad experienced. Mm-hmm. So all of us, as we live with our father's memory or our father's presence or our father's absence, for our own growth, must come to the place of acceptance, of the end of the cycle of what did who's the woman that wrote about on death and dying?
Oh, Kubler-Ross.
Yeah,
Kubler-Ross.
Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. As she said, when we approach our death, we all go through stages of grief. I was teaching a class one time in California when I lived in Ohio. I was out here. And I made the statement that I thought that the same cycle of grief also happened around disability, both for the parent and the child. And a gentleman came up to me after the class and said that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross had been his teacher, and he was her protege. And at the end of her life, she came to the same understanding that its disability is also concomitant to death in terms of the death of our hopes and our dreams.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I think in lifetimes we do experience death of many things, not just people we love, but dreams, goals, on and on.
Expectations about relationships.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And for our own selves, our own expectations about what we should accomplish, the great should, which is
we're our own worst critics.
We're our own worst critics.
Absolutely.
So this about Father is also about acceptance and healing, our wounded hearts for all of those losses and all of those aspects of life that we can't change. And as Fletch demonstrated so beautifully in what he wrote and what he said, it was serving his mother as she died, and then accepting the love of his daughter and giving his love unconditionally to his daughter in all the ways that he talked about. So if we're going to have love available to us, then we must heal, and that means acceptance.
Absolutely. We kind of got a little off track here with Fletch's kind of over his time allotment. So I'm kind of a little bit off schedule here.
Okay.
I think we have. I'm getting a signal that we're doing okay.
Oh, good.
But you know what? I want everybody to know that this has been a heavy
Instrument
show
corner.
so far, but we really do have fun at the end.
Yep. In fact, that's going to be coming up. Why don't we just move into that? And that would be
Instrument corner,
the instrument corner, the human voice,
which is the oldest instrument there is. Did you ever think of your voice as being an instrument, Jeff?
I absolutely have thought of my voice as being an instrument, and one that I, of course, am very critical of.
And I don't think many people do think of their voice like that, unless they're, a singer or like you, an artist in music. I think that's a very interesting thought to ponder. We all have our voice, well, most of us, and that's our instrument, unless we choose some other ones.
And it is now believed by theorists concerning speech that we, as humans, sang in long ago times, before there was language. We sang, and I can certainly understand that. I sing all day long. I make up songs about everything.
I know you do, and you're going to share some of your family's music, aren't you?
We are. The next section is, are we going right into
We're
this?
going right into it,
Okay.
yes.
The human voice. I've been very fortunate to have lived in the age of tape recorders. And in 1976, when my father was midway in his losses, 4 months before he lost his voice, I was in Cleveland, and I happened to turn on an inexpensive cassette player I had and recorded what my family always did. We sang together. And this is my father and my mother singing a song that this is the third time they sang it, and I'd finally picked it out on the guitar. So this is a song called, what's it called? When You Come to the End of the Day. whenever I hear my dad and mom sing it, it really takes me back. Record your families, record them speaking and singing. You will capture memories that you can replay. One of the things I have to forgive are my own errors as a father. And I don't know why I thought it was a good idea, but when my son was 3 years old, I decided we should catch a butterfly and mount it. What a horrible, horrible idea. So we made a butterfly net out of a coat hanger and some cheesecloth and waited, and by God, we caught the butterfly. And as soon as it was in the net flailing around for its life, I thought, oh my God, what a mistake. Well, it unfortunately expired in that struggle, and then we did take it out of the net, and my son was able to hold it. Well, I had my dulcimer sitting on the table. He was 3 years old, and he began to look at it, and I gave him a pick, and I turned on the tape recorder, and I captured his first song. Now, my son, John Kyle Moyer, is a very accomplished musician, composer, sound engineer, and experimental musician. He's a fabulous
And now how
musician.
old?
He was 3 years old.
And now he is how old now?
Oh, he is 43, I think, or 40.
So 40 years ago.
40 years ago, yeah. So again, I turned on that same cassette recorder and captured this song, If by Chance You See a Butterfly.
You can catch it and you can hold it when it's dead. It's really a great song. Bye bye.
I like that. I like it.
I think Kyle's song is finished.
Okay. I'm sorry for the noise that I was making in the middle of that wonderful little perfect song, beginning, song, coda, and end. Well, my son being the recording artist that he is, and having now his own son, Timothy John, I have written for all of my children and grandchildren birth songs. And this is my grandson, Timothy John, my third grandson. This is his birth song, which I will sing accompanying Timothy as he was recorded.
And how old is he?
6 months.
Okay.
Today, your name has been given, young Timothy John, honoring those who are here and are gone. Your name is your own, none other the same, and yet there's so much now forged in your name. Timothy, Timothy John, Timothy, Timothy John. Your name is as clear as solstice's light, the 15th midday in December, and 6 generations in tradition's flight, this joyous day long will be remembered. This joyous day long will be remembered. Timothy, Timothy John, Timothy, Timothy John.
And we have not seen this little guy yet. With COVID, we haven't been able. They're in Ohio, we're in California. So we are just delighted when we get pictures and sounds like this that come here. And we're hoping we can travel there in the fall. And we're going to take this show on the road when we travel. So that'll be fun too.
Well, again, it's been a show that we've experimented with, and it's had a few rough spots.
A few little techie problems here.
That's the nature of live TV and all of its wonder and its glory. we thank you all for spending time with us again. And the next show in 2 weeks on July 1st will be on advocacy. And our guest is going to be Holland DeLille. Holland was the photographer for the 504 demonstration, and her photographs are in the film Crip Camp, which has been nominated for an Academy Award. And her photographs have appeared in the New York Times and the Boston Globe. And she has much to say about documenting history as she's gone, and also advocating in her community and throughout her life for accessibility for people with disabilities. So today we have covered a lot of ground, both exterior and interior. And the only thing I will close with is that all of us, with our male and our female inner natures, must work with all of our heart to come to terms with all life gives us, and with acceptance and with stoic quiet, come to that place of peace, sweet peace.